Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the MetaStellar YouTube channel. Are you looking for some free science fiction and fantasy books to get you through the weekend? We've got 5 of them today. We're bringing you the cozy this weekend, fantasy cozy. But the first book on our list is actually the opposite of cozy. It's a military sci-fi box set with alien invaders. But before we get to that, hi, everybody. My name is Maria KOROLOV. I'm the editor here at MetaStellar, and I want to thank our other editor, Emma Foster, for being here today. Hi, Emma. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so before we get into it, I want to tell people that anthology number 3 is about to come out, but number 1 and 2 are already out there. The links are in the description box below, and Emma helped us with editing them. Thanks, Emma. Okay, so without any further bureaucratic nonsense, let's get into the books because that is what you are here for. And why don't I make that a little bit bigger for you guys? There you go. Please ignore the weirdness there with the green screen. Okay, so this book is Stummer Tales from Cozy Vales, number 2, by L.A. Scott and 7 other authors. It's a short story anthology that are all set in the Cozy Vales fantasy world. And the other book is normally 99 cents, but it is also free today. And the other authors who contribute to the book are G. Clatworthy, Bonnie Axton, Cassandra Sterling, Rebecca Buchanan, Miranda Harold, Philip Sanderson, and L. Stewart. So cozy, so cute. So this is set in a very traditional fantasy, medieval kind of queendom. And it has all the usual fairy tale characters in it. And it's super cute. It reminds me a lot of Terry Pratchett's Tiffany Aching books. So this particular anthology focuses on some summer holidays, and all the stories kind of mention it, although the first story mentioned the holidays just in passing. So in the first story, which is by the cozy fantasy writer L.A. Scott, there's a peace-loving, shy gnome who enjoys inventing machinery. His name is Petrovius, and he's about to go to war with his neighbor, an all-out war, because he suspects his neighbor, another gnome, of being responsible for spilling acorns all over his patio in his yard and making him slip and fall and breaking a tea set. So he writes this extremely polite letter to the neighbor, because this is going to be a war of polite letters, because it's a cozy setting. And he's too shy to talk to her directly, so he slips the letter under her door. And then when he comes back to the house, he discovers that all the acorns that he picked up the previous day and collected into a bin are now all over his lawn again. So he decides he's going to build a machine to gather them all up for him. And then he gets another letter in response from the neighbor, also very polite. And she says she has nothing to do with the acorns, but she does want him to stop letting his machines go into her yard and ruining her flowers, which makes him even madder because his machines don't go into her yard. So he builds the acorn gathering machine. The first test goes well, and then there's another letter from his neighbor. Her tulips have been mutilated. Again, she's blaming his machine. So this goes back and forth with some escalations, and eventually he winds up going to the authorities for help, which doesn't do any good. And at the end of the story, he and his neighbor team up to figure out who's actually responsible. And it's a very fantasy-ish kind of solution. So very, very cute, very low stakes, very cozy. I enjoyed it a lot. I'm going to be reading the rest of the stories in this book, and I've already picked up the other book in the series, which, as I mentioned, is also free today. Then we go on to book number 4 on today's list, Destin Magic by Raine. This is actually a box set of the first 2 books in the 7-book wild and witchy series of sexy magical mysteries. The other 2 box sets are $7 each, and they are not in Kindle Unlimited. And the author has been on our list a couple times before. So the book starts out with Marnie, who's an older witch. She's in her house. She's talking to her 3 cats about the fact that her sister has been murdered and that Danny, her niece, doesn't know that she was born into a family of witches. Marnie doesn't have any children, so Danny is the last of their magical bloodline. Eventually, Danny will come into her powers, and it's going to be a big shock if nobody fills her in. But Danny is on her way to visit Marnie for summer vacation, so maybe things will get straightened out. Then something unexpected happens at the end of chapter 1. I'm not going to tell you what because it came as a surprise, and so I'm going to leave it as a surprise for you too. But let me just say that the mystery does get going pretty quickly, and we meet the villain of the story. Or maybe, is he a villain? Is she a villain? I'm not going to give it away. So who knows? Then we switch to Danny's point of view. She's on a ferry to visit her aunt who lives on Blueberry Island, and she's looking forward to a few peaceful weeks soaking up the sun, eating homemade ice cream, drinking blueberry mojitos with her aunt. She's 28. She's been bouncing around from job to job, school to school, moving from one location to another, but hasn't found missing something that would make her happy. She's also covered in tattoos and swears a lot. And the bad language should have been a tip-off, but it wasn't, because I was surprised by what happens next. So the ferry arrives on the island, and then a police chief shows up to talk to her before she can disembark. There's been an accident, and the police chief is her old crush, who she used to spend her summer vacations with when she was on the island as a kid. And he already knows that her family is all witches, and he still has a crush on her too. And they have sex pretty much immediately after they meet, graphically and explicitly. So that's what I mean about the bad language should have been a tip-off right from the beginning, because the sex scene came as a surprise to me, because I'm thinking this is a cozy mystery, and in cozy mysteries, the dirty stuff tends to happen behind closed doors. So just keep that in mind if you're easily shocked. So I prefer my books with a little bit more action and less mushy stuff. So I don't think I'll be sticking with it. But if you want a magical mystery with a gorgeous setting and lots of spiciness, you can check it out, and it's free. Next, we have Safe Passage, Shelter in Place by Clay Wise, the last of 5 books in the Safe Passage, EMP Survival in a Powerless World, and EMP Survival series. The other books are $5 each, but they're all in Kindle Unlimited. The author has been on our list before a lot. In fact, a couple of the other books in the series have also been on our list. And if you're a regular follower of Free Fridays, you might already have them. Emma read this book for us. She read the first couple of chapters of this book for us, which I forgot to mention. We don't actually read the whole book for these Free Fridays. We only read the first few chapters so that we can give you a review on the very day that the book is free before it stops being free. Okay, so Emma, what did you think of the beginning of this book?
So this is actually my first time reading an EMP story. So if you are familiar with what that is, it's when this electromagnetic pulse goes through the whole world. It takes down all of the electronics. Basically, everyone in the story usually ends up fending for themselves. This story is actually the 5th book in the series, so it begins way after the EMP has happened, but all the characters are still definitely feeling the effects of what is happening. So the story begins with main character Lori. Her group, they are trying to survive in the countryside, so they're reeling from all the obstacles in their way and also the loss that they have experienced. And at this point, they've discovered this ranch with some horses that'll make travel a lot easier. They're eager to keep moving. They don't want to have any threats cross their path, but also they're looking for the father of one of the girls. So they have an incentive to keep moving. They eventually take the horses, and then find shelter in an old, seemingly abandoned house. But after a few hours, they witness this lone traveler riding through the woods to the house. And then two men in ATVs attempt to gun him down, but the man successfully kills them. He sets the ATVs on fire. Lori and the others are aware that how dangerous this man is because of how he's able to successfully fend off this attack. Lori and one of the other women in the group goes out with some shotguns and they order him to halt. He complies. He acts very peaceful regarding this, but Lori is very suspicious of him. She orders the man to halt, and this guy explains that the people on the ATVs were following him because they wanted to steal all of his supplies, and there's also plenty of other people in this rogue settlement coming their way, and they're actually pretty close by, and actually close to the settlement that they had hoped to stay in once they left the old house. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. So the man warns them of this settlement. Lori still doesn't trust him, but it turns out that he has told the truth. They start scouting out the area, and they discover that the settlement that the group wanted to go to has been burned to the ground. And now they need to find a way to escape this opposing settlement. So I have never really gotten into EMP stories. This is honestly like the first one I've actually read. So being dropped into book 5 in a genre I'm not familiar with, that was definitely an interesting review experience, but I'm not knocking like the writing or anything like that, because I will say stakes were high from the start. There were a lot of characters to get to know, but they were honestly pretty interesting, even though there was so many that I had to figure out in the first few chapters. And I appreciated like Lori's resourcefulness and her character specifically. So if you want to read any of these series and like get into the EMP stories, I would highly recommend starting with this one and starting for book 1.
Thanks. Okay, yeah, our regular reviewer, Alex, has read the previous books in the series, but he was busy today.
Yeah.
He couldn't take it. All right, so let me make this cover a little bit bigger for you. There you go. Wormwood Abbey by Christina Baehr is the first of 4 books in the Secrets of Ormdale, a Gaslamp fantasy series. The other books are $4 each, and they're not in Kindle Unlimited. Kindle Unlimited is where you pay $12 a month and you read all the books you want. And Emma read this for us again. So Emma, was this book more like up your alley?
Yeah, definitely. It read like Jane Austen with a little dash of fantasy thrown in. So it was almost kind of like a cozy fantasy with a Jane Austen feel. So it starts out with Edith. She lives in this house with her father, who's a clergyman. They live in a parish, as well as her mother and her siblings. Her father unexpectedly receives a letter saying that the relatives at Wormwood Abbey, it's from them, they're saying that your long estranged uncle has just died, leaving us, the daughters, the only people left, but you have inherited the estate. So their uncles recently passed, now they need to go to this abbey. And the entire time, Edith is really excited because it's way out in the desolate countryside where there's hardly any civilization, and all she thinks about is, oh, this is going to be the perfect place to write my detective novels, because that's what she does. And I really respect that. So they begin this long, difficult journey. They end up coming to this ruinous estate. It almost looks like it's partially fallen down, but there, the remaining daughters come to greet them, and everything seems to be going pretty well, except the oldest cousin, Gwendolyn, just immediately takes a disliking to Edith. And we're not really sure why. Edith really wants to know why she doesn't like her. And then suddenly, this tall, dark, and handsome neighbor named Simon Drake appears at the door. And then Edith spends a bunch of time trying to figure out what his intentions truly are. Because, in her words, she's suspicious of eligible men. She's just like, there's got to be a reason this guy just randomly showed up at our doorstep. But, like, maybe you need to focus on something else, because you're focusing on this a lot. So afterward, Edith goes to talk to Gwendolyn. she comes up with this idea of, hey, maybe it would be a good idea to sell the Abbey and then just sort of move on with your life. But Edith does not like that idea at all. She won't even consider it, saying it's definitely tied to the family legacy, and it's clear that there are a lot of deep sentiments regarding this estate that we haven't yet found out. Then Gwendolyn also kind of feels threatened by Edith's presence, and Edith tries to figure out why, maybe if she's like jealous of her or something, but I haven't gotten too far into the story to figure out why. So despite all this mystery and conflict, Edith begins to settle into this abbey. She actually enjoys the countryside, she enjoys having this quiet place to write, she enjoys being with her family in this mysterious place. But one day, something strange falls out of her fireplace, and when she goes to investigate, Edith discovers a tiny salamander. And it's clear that this salamander is going to have these amazing powers and abilities, and this is where the whole fantasy aspect of it comes in. So, like I was saying, it does read kind of like Jane Austen and a little bit like Cozy Mystery. There are certain parts where Edith will talk to the reader. She'll be like, "Dear reader," you know. So I thought immediately I was like Jane Eyre and like Jane Austen's writing, that type of thing. And also, I really enjoyed the fact that she was a writer. She just wanted to find a place to be alone. I really like that about her character. So I will say that the prose did come across as telling at times. A lot of it, especially since Edith is talking to the reader, it comes across as her just telling us the information. And I was like, well, I probably could have learned that on my own, you know, but honestly, I really enjoyed it. The prose was very smooth, and I want to keep reading to see what happens next.
Cool, thanks. Okay, so before we get on to book number 1 on today's list, I want to thank our sponsors, our Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome. All the money that is donated via Patreon or donated any other way, such as the merch purchases or the book purchases, goes to pay for original fiction that we publish on the MetaStellar website. The entire editorial staff, including both of us, we are all volunteers. So thank you guys. You rock. We would literally not be here without you. Okay, and now on to book number 1 on today's list. Let me make that a little bit bigger so you guys can see it. And there you go. Earthrise by Daniel Arenson. And this is a box set of the first 3 books in the 15-book Earthrise, a space opera series. The other books are $1 to $5 each, but they're all in Kindle Unlimited. And the author also has other series set in the same universe. And the author has been in the USA Today bestseller list and has been on our Free Friday list a couple times before. And this is my favorite genre. So I was expecting to love this book when I started reading it. But it starts a little slow. So if you want your space operas to start right in the middle of the plot, you have a few chapters to get through. So in chapter 1, the aliens are here on Earth. They're blowing stuff up, and they kill the mother of our main character, Marco. And she dies right there in front of him, killed by one of these horrible aliens that look like giant centipedes. And then we jump forward into the future. It's now a few years later. Marco has turned 18. He's old enough to be drafted. Hello, Cam. And he's going to be joining the army in order to fight these guys. He's terrified. He'd rather stay home in his father's library that his father runs, working on his novel. But instead, he's called up. He has a final farewell scene with his girlfriend, who's also going into the military. And then he's shipped off to a holding center and then to boot camp. Luckily, his best friend from childhood is there with him, as well as a couple of other people he knows, and some new people that he meets. And I read, what's it, like 17 chapters in, and we still haven't gotten to the plot. So it's been the holding center, then boot camp, latrine duty, and kitchen duty. and cleaning and drills and sergeants and bullying by other people, other recruits, and interpersonal issues, but we still haven't gotten to the actual plot or him going into actual battle and fighting any aliens. So I was expecting this to be like Starship Troopers, but Starship Troopers gets into the action really, really quickly. And this takes a really, really long time. It feels like a very realistic portrayal of what going into the military will be. Like, in this far future when we're invaded by aliens, humans do have space travel, and so they've struck back at the aliens with a nuclear bomb. But basically it's this war of attrition that's going on right now. So it's definitely interesting. It promises to be a lot. I mean, it's a great series. Like I said, USA Today best-selling author. Lots of books in this universe. It's a #1 bestseller today. So a lot of people like this book. I just couldn't get into it. I mean, maybe if I just keep going further, the pace will pick up. But right now, I can't see myself sticking with it. So if you do have a longer attention span than I do, or if you're interested in like a slower build up in relationships between the characters and how somebody like who's 18 and has thrust out of his life kind of learns to find himself in the military, definitely check it out. I do like the fact that it's really egalitarian. There's women are being drafted. It's gay and lesbian inclusive. I do like those aspects of it very much. So I might come back to it. I might come back to it. You never know. Okay, so those were the 5 books that we reviewed, the beginnings of for today's Free Friday list. Are you guys going to watch it? Are you guys going to read any of them? Let us know in the comments. Let me know what you thought. And if you don't want to miss any of these reviews, like and subscribe, and get them in your email by signing up for our newsletter. All the links are below. And subscribe to the channel to get all the free Fridays. And thank you, Emma, for joining me today. And before we go, if you don't want to leave our channel just yet, we are serializing Gods and Monsters by E.E. King, who's an award-winning author and artist, and it's a vampire novel set in the 1980s. Our interview with the author is here, and the recording of the author reading the first installment of the book is here. We're now up to installment 18 on both our website and on this channel. Check it out, subscribe. See you guys all next Friday. Bye-bye.
Bye.